You believe you are someone. This is the first and most necessary lie. Without it, the day cannot begin. You rise, and the rising assumes continuity, that the person who slept is the person who wakes, that the name attached to this body yesterday still adheres this morning, that the accumulated history, called your life, belongs to something stable enough to be called you. The belief is so fundamental that to question it feels like madness, and perhaps it is. But madness and clarity are not always opposites. The truth is more terrible. There is no one there. There never was. What you call yourself is a pattern of repetition, so persistent it creates the illusion of substance. A whirlpool is not a thing, but a shape that water makes under certain conditions. When the conditions change, the whirlpool dissolves. You are the whirlpool. And you sense this in moments you try not to examine too closely, when the whole edifice of selfhood threatens to come apart. This is the condition that myth, religion, and philosophy have been managing or concealing since language made it possible to ask the question that should not be asked. What if nothing I believe about what I am is true? The earliest creation myths do not celebrate origin. They describe catastrophe. In the Babylonian Enuma Elish, the universe begins when Marduk slaughters Tiamat, the primordial chaos goddess, and splits her corpse to make sky and earth. Creation is not divine craftsmanship, but cosmic butchery. Humanity comes later, fashioned from the blood of her consort, Kingu, the god of rebellion. We are made from murdered divinity, born already guilty, already implicated in violence we did not commit. There is no innocence to return to because there was no innocence at the beginning. The Norse myths are worse. The first giant, Ymir, is killed by Odin and his brothers, who fashion the world from his body. His flesh becomes earth, his blood the seas, his bones the mountains, and his skull the sky. Everything that exists is carved from a dead god's corpse. The world itself is a charnel house. And at the end, Ragnarok, the gods themselves will die, the world will burn, and the cycle may or may not begin again. There is no guarantee. The structure is not eternal. It is provisional, held together by force, and the force is failing. Even Genesis, read closely, is not reassuring. God creates by division, light from dark, water from land, day from night, but the darkness is not destroyed. It is only separated, pushed to the margins. It remains, and when the serpent speaks, it does not introduce something foreign. It speaks of what was already there, latent in the structure, the possibility of refusal. The knowledge of good and evil is not moral instruction. It is the awareness that things could be otherwise, that the given order is not necessary. The exile from Eden is not punishment for disobedience. It is the inevitable consequence of consciousness awakening to its own contingency. This is what the myths encoded and what philosophy would later try to explain. The human being is the creature that can see through its own nature and, in seeing through it, destabilize it. We are not exiled from essence. We are exiled by the awareness that essence was never there to begin with. Philosophy began when someone had the hubris or despair to ask, what is being? The question seems abstract. It is not. It is the most dangerous question possible because it exposes the fact that we do not know what anything is, including ourselves. The pre-Socratics sensed this. Heraclitus said, "You cannot step into the same river twice. The river changes." But he did not stop there. You cannot step into it once, because by the time your foot touches water, the water has moved. There is no river, only flow, and if there is no river, what are you? Parmenides went further. Being is one, unchanging, and eternal, but the world we perceive is multiple, changing, and temporal. Therefore, the world we perceive is an illusion. One of these men said reality is flux. The other said flux is illusion. They cannot both be right, but they might both be wrong in ways that reveal the deeper problem. Being does not yield to questioning. It recedes the closer you approach. Plato tried to stabilize the ground by splitting reality. There is the world of appearances changing, deceptive, unreliable, and the world of forms, eternal and perfect. Your essence, the real you, exists not here but there, in the realm of unchanging truth. This life is a shadow. But if this life is a shadow, and you are here, then you are not encountering your essence, but its degraded copy. The comfort Plato offers is that you have an eternal soul. The terror is that you are not it. You are something else, something lesser, trapped in a body that decays, in a world that lies. Aristotle domesticated the terror. He rejected the forms, insisting that essence is embedded in the particular, that the oak tree's essence is not in some transcendent oakness, but in the tree itself, in its nature unfolding toward its telos, its purpose. Humans too have a nature, a function. We are rational animals. Our telos is eudaimonia flourishing, living in accordance with reason. This should be reassuring. It is not. Because if your essence is to be rational, and you are not yet rational, then you are not yet yourself. You are potential, not actual, and potential can be unrealized. You can fail at being human. The possibility of failure means the essence is not given, but achieved. And if it must be achieved, it was never yours to begin with. The medieval synthesis tried to paper over the crack by installing God as guarantor. Your essence is defined by God. You are made in the image of the divine. But the divine image is obscured by sin, and sin is original transmitted through generation, inherited before you draw breath. You are born already broken, already alienated from what you are supposed to be. Salvation is possible, but it requires grace, which you cannot earn, and God's grace is inscrutable. Some are chosen, some are not. You cannot know which you are. The structure is totalizing, but at its center is an abyss, the possibility that you are damned, and the damnation was decided before you existed. When the Reformation shattered the unified church, it did not resolve this, it intensified it. Luther, you are saved by faith alone, but you cannot produce faith by will. It is given, or it is not. Calvin, predestination is absolute. God has already decided. Your actions do not alter the verdict. The only question is whether you are among the elect, and you will not know until you die. The anxiety this produced was unbearable. The entire architecture of Protestant capitalism, Weber argued, was an attempt to manage the dread work as proof of election, success as a sign of grace. But the proof was never sufficient. The dread remained. By the time Descartes sat by his fire and decided to doubt everything, the ground was already collapsing. He thought he could rebuild from the bedrock of certainty. I think, therefore I am. But the certainty is empty. You are a thinking thing. Fine. What else? Descartes could not say. The self he arrived at is a ghost pure mind, disembodied, disconnected from the world. He proved you exist, but only as a witness. The body, the world, other people, all these remain doubtful. The certainty is purchased at the cost of everything that makes existence bearable. You are alone inside your mind, and the mind might be all there is. There is a moment in childhood no one records it because it is unspeakable when the structure first shows its instability. You are playing, you are absorbed. Then, without warning, you step outside the absorption and watch yourself playing. The game continues, but it is no longer spontaneous. You are performing it. And the watching creates a gap. Who is playing and who is watching? The question is simple. The answer fractures everything. Some people never recover from this moment. They spend the rest of their lives trying to return to the absorption, the unself-consciousness they lost. Others become addicted to the watching, endlessly observing themselves, unable to act without commentary. Most oscillate, half absorbed, half watching, never quite whole. This is the condition Kierkegaard called despair. Not sadness, not suffering. Despair as the sickness unto death, the structural condition of selfhood. To be a self is to be split. The self you are and the self you choose to be are never aligned, never reconciled. You can despair by being unconscious of it, living in immediacy, animal-like, never fully human. Or you can despair by being too conscious, unable to commit, and trapped in infinite reflection. Either way, the self is not a given, it is a task. And the task cannot be completed by your own power. You need God, Kierkegaard said, to hold the synthesis together. But God, in Kierkegaard's rendering, is not comfort. God is the absolute demand that you become what you cannot become alone. The anxiety is permanent. Nietzsche saw this and went further. God is dead, we have killed him, and death is not liberation, it is a catastrophe. God was the weight that held the structure in place. Without God, there is no essence, no nature, and no purpose inscribed in being. There is only will, naked, terrible, accountable to nothing. The Übermensch is not a solution. It is the question reframed: what kind of creature can endure the absence of all given meaning and still create? Not many. Most will collapse into nihilism or reactionary nostalgia, yearning for the chains they have broken. The abyss gazes also into you, and most people, gazing back, go mad. The 20th century arrived, and the abyss opened wider. 2 world wars demonstrated that civilization is a thinner membrane than anyone wished to believe. The camps revealed that the human being is capable of industrialized annihilation, not as an aberration, but as a logical extension of bureaucracy and technology. The people who ran the machinery of death were not monsters. They were functionaries. They had families. They followed orders. The essence of humanity, if it existed, did not prevent this. It may have enabled it. Sartre, writing in the aftermath, made the situation explicit. Existence precedes essence. You are thrown into the world without purpose, without nature, without a script. What you become is the sum of your actions. There is no escape into human nature because there is no human nature. You are free, and the freedom is absolute, and you are responsible for everything you do. This sounds like empowerment. It is condemnation. Because now every act of cowardice, every self-deception, every failure to choose is not just a mistake, it is a betrayal of the only thing you have, your freedom, and you cannot plead ignorance. You know, you have always known, you simply refuse to acknowledge it. Heidegger, more dangerous still, said we are not even primarily free subjects. We are Dasein, being there, thrown into a world we did not choose, among others we did not select. In a historical moment we cannot escape. Authenticity is possible, but it requires facing what he calls being toward death. You are going to die. Not abstractly. You, specifically, will cease. And knowing this, you can live with urgency and clarity, or you can lose yourself in the they, the anonymous public that tells you who to be, what to value, and how to live. Most people choose they. It is easier, but the ease is a kind of death before death. You live, but you are not there. Someone else is living your life. Levinas, reading Heidegger, recoiled. The problem is not death. The problem is the other. The face of the other confronts you with an ethical demand you did not choose and cannot refuse. You are responsible before you are free. The other's vulnerability makes a claim on you prior to any decision you make about who to be. This should limit the existential terror. It does not. It magnifies it. Now you are responsible not only for yourself but for everyone, and you cannot fulfill the responsibility. It is infinite. You will fail. The failure is structural. Camus, less systematic and more literary, admitted the absurdity outright. The universe does not care. Meaning is not embedded in being. We demand justification, and being offers none. The only question is whether to live anyway. Suicide is the fundamental philosophical problem, not because it is always wrong, but because it is always available. You must choose to continue without reasons that compel continuation, and the choosing must be repeated daily without resolution. Psychoanalysis arrived at the same abyss from below, through the examination of symptoms. Freud, you are not master in your own house. The conscious self, the I that speaks, is not the author of your thoughts, desires, or actions. It is a latecomer, a narrator scrambling to make sense of processes already underway. The id does not care about coherence. It wants. The superego does not negotiate. It judges. The ego, mediating, is not a sovereign but a translator between incompatible languages. And beneath it all, the drives eros and thanatos. Life and death pull in opposite directions, neither eliminable nor reconcilable. You are not one. You are many, in conflict, and the conflict has no resolution. The best you can hope for is management. Lacan made it worse. The self is not even yours. It is a misrecognition. The mirror stage, when the infant sees itself and identifies with the image, is the origin of the ego, but the image is a lie. The infant is uncoordinated, fragmented, and helpless. The image is whole. The gap between the felt fragmentation and the seen unity is permanent. You spend your life trying to become the image, but you cannot, because the image is not real. It is a fantasy imposed by the gaze of the other. You are not a subject. You are subjected to language, to the symbolic order, to the desire of the other, and the other's desire is opaque. You do not know what it wants. You guess, you perform, you fail. The failure is constitutive. Jung, breaking with Freud, tried to offer a more optimistic account. The unconscious is not only personal, but also collective, populated by archetypes, primordial images shared across humanity. Individuation is the process of integrating these into a coherent self, but Jung never pretended the process was easy or guaranteed. The shadow, the parts of yourself you reject, must be confronted. The anima, or animus, the contrasexual opposite within, must be acknowledged. And at the center, the self, capital S, which is not the ego but the totality, the mandala, the symbol of wholeness. But the self is not you. It is what you might become if the individuation succeeds, and the process can fail. People go mad, they fragment, they are possessed by the archetypes instead of integrating them. The structure Jung offers is not reassuring. It is a map of a dangerous journey most people do not survive intact. Now consider 5 symbols, each a trapdoor into the abyss. First, the serpent eating its tail, the Ouroboros. It represents eternity, the cycle of birth and death, and the unity of opposites. But look closer. The serpent is devouring itself. It is both predator and prey, both sustaining and destroying itself. There is no outside. The cycle is closed. If you are the serpent, you are eating yourself to survive. The process is unsustainable, but it cannot stop. This is not unity. This is autophagic recursion. Consciousness turned back on itself, endlessly consuming, never satisfied. Second, the broken mirror. Reflection is how you know yourself, but the mirror shatters, and now there are fragments, each showing a piece, none showing the whole. You try to reassemble the image, but the pieces do not fit. There are gaps. And in the gaps, you see not emptiness, but something else. Something that was never reflected, something that exists only in the breaking. The true face is not the one you saw when the mirror was whole. It is the one that appears when the mirror breaks, and you cannot look away. Third, the empty throne. Every culture has the image, the seat of power, vacant. The king is dead, or the king never existed, or the king was always a fiction, and the throne was always empty. But the emptiness does not dissolve the throne's authority. People still bow, they still obey, they still kill each other over who will sit there. The power is real, even if the occupant is not. You too have a throne inside the place where the self is supposed to sit, sovereign, coherent, and in command. But when you look, the throne is empty. And the emptiness rules more absolutely than any king. Fourth, the abyss that speaks. Nietzsche. When you gaze into the abyss also gazes into you. But he did not say what the abyss sees. or what it says when it speaks. The abyss is not passive, it is not neutral, it is hungry, it calls, and some people answer. They step into it, not from despair but from fascination. They want to know what is at the bottom. There is no bottom, the falling continues, and the abyss, speaking, tells them they were always falling, even when they thought they were standing still. The mask that cannot be removed. You put it on for a performance. The performance ends. You reach to remove it. It does not come off. You pull harder. The mask is fused to your face. Or the face has become the mask. Or there was never a face beneath it, only another mask, older, fused earlier. You wear yourself, and the wearing is what you are. To remove the mask would be to remove the face. To remove the face would be to discover there is no head, only masks, all the way down. These are not metaphors for something else. They are the something else. Religion knew this long before philosophy articulated it. The mystics, especially, knew. Street John of the Cross, the dark night of the soul, is not a crisis of faith, but the structure of faith God withdraws. Not as punishment, not as a test, but because proximity to God requires the dissolution of the self. You cannot meet God and remain yourself. The self is the obstacle. It must be annihilated. But the annihilation is agony. You are being unmade, and the unmaking feels like abandonment. It is not. It is a union. But union with God requires ceasing to exist in the way you thought existence worked. Meister Eckhart, more radical. The eye with which I see God is the same eye with which God sees me. There is no separation, but if there is no separation, there is no you. The self is already God, or the self never was. Either way, the individual dissolves. Eckhart was accused of heresy. He was not wrong. The Buddhist tradition is more explicit. Anatta, no self. Not the self is an illusion, but there is no self. What you call yourself is a bundle of aggregates, form, sensation, perception, mental formations, and consciousness, none permanent, none you. The bundle is temporary. It will dissolve. To cling to it is to suffer. To release it is liberation. But release is not easy. It requires seeing through the most fundamental illusion that you are a continuous, coherent someone. You are not. You are a process, impermanent, empty of inherent existence. Seeing is enlightenment, but enlightenment is not comforting. It is the end of the illusion that there was ever anyone to comfort. Hindu Advaita Vedanta goes further. Atman is Brahman. The self is the absolute, but not the self you think you are. That self, the ego, the personality, the individual, is Maya, illusion. The true self is undifferentiated consciousness, identical with the ground of all being. To realize this is liberation, but the realization requires recognizing that everything you thought was you is not. Your life, your memories, your identity, Maya, illusion. The liberation is not personal. It is the dissolution of the personal into the impersonal absolute. The Gnostics, heretical from the beginning, said the world itself is a prison. The material realm was created by a false god, the demiurge, and the true God is utterly transcendent, utterly other. You carry a spark of the true God within, but it is trapped in flesh, in matter, in ignorance. Salvation requires gnosis knowledge, but not intellectual knowledge. Experiential knowledge that you are not of this world, that this world is a lie, and that the only escape is to remember what you were before you were trapped here. But the remembering destroys your relationship to everything you thought was real. You cannot live in the world and know the truth. The truth exiles you, even as it liberates. These are not reassuring doctrines. They are emergency measures. The structure of reality is hostile or illusory. The self is false or must be destroyed. Salvation exists, but it is not what you think, and the price is everything you are. What happens when someone genuinely faces this? You are sitting in a room. The room is familiar. Your furniture, your things, arranged by you. But the familiarity is wrong. Everything is where you left it, but nothing feels like yours. You try to remember why you chose this arrangement. You cannot. Or you can, but the reasons no longer make sense. Someone made these choices. The person is not you. Or it was you, but you are not that person anymore. Or you were never that person. The continuity you assumed is broken. You pick up an object, a book, a photograph, something meant to anchor identity. It does not work. The book is an object. The photograph is paper and chemicals. The meaning you attached is gone. Not because of trauma, not because of loss, because the attachment itself was arbitrary, and arbitrariness, once seen, cannot be unseen. You could have attached meaning anywhere. You did. And now the doing is visible, and the visibility unmakes the meaning. You try to say your name. The syllables are correct, but they do not refer. Or they refer to a story, and the story is something you have been telling, but you are not the author. The story was being told before you arrived. You inherited it, you elaborated it, but it does not describe someone. It performs for someone, and the performance is tired. You stand. You walk to the mirror. Your face is there. It is the face people recognize. It is the face you have worn. But it is not your face. Or it is, but the your has dissolved. There is a face. It is attached to a body. The body responds to the name, but the name, the face, and the body, these are coordinates in a system, not evidence of someone. This is not dissociation. Dissociation is pathology. This is clarity, and the clarity is worse than dissociation because dissociation can be treated, clarity cannot. The modernist literature of the 20th century is the record of this clarity recurring. Joseph K. is arrested but never told his crime. The trial proceeds. He hires lawyers, consults experts, and searches for the law. He never finds it. The law is inaccessible, but it is absolute. At the end, he is executed like a dog. The shame, he thinks, will outlive him, but there is no him to outlive. There was only the process, and the process has ended. Beckett. Two men wait by a tree for someone named Godot who never arrives. They consider leaving. They do not leave. The next day, they return. Nothing happens. Nobody comes. Nobody goes. It's awful, they continue. The continuation is not hope. It is the absence of alternatives. To stop would require a decision, and the decision would require someone capable of deciding. There is no one. There is only the waiting, which is the same as the continuing, which is the same as the being. He invented more than 70 heteronyms, not pseudonyms, but distinct personalities, each with its own biography, style, and philosophy. But Pessoa did not create them. They arose in him, fully formed, and he transcribed them. Which one was Pessoa? None, or all. He wrote, I am nothing. I'll always be nothing. I can't even wish to be something. Multiplicity is not richness, it is disintegration. The self fragments into persons, and the persons are strangers to each other, and none is sovereign. Consciousness flows, unbroken, without clear boundaries between past and present, inner and outer, self and world. Mrs. Dalloway walks through London, preparing for a party, and the walk is also a lifetime, is also the war, is also Septimus Smith throwing himself from a window. The selves are porous. They bleed into each other. The clarity of identity is a lie we tell to function, but Woolf knew the lie, and the knowing destroyed her. Borges. A man encounters a book that contains all possible books. Another man tries to catalog a library that is infinite. A third man is told he will be executed at dawn and dreams a lifetime in a single night. The stories are puzzles, labyrinths, and metaphysical traps, but the trap is not the plot. The trap is that the characters, upon realizing the structure they inhabit, cannot escape it. Awareness does not liberate. It reveals that there was never anything to liberate. These are not entertainment, they are diagnostics. The condition they diagnose is ours. Now the implication turns. You cannot live in the abyss, not continuously. The clarity would annihilate you. So you build structures, habits, roles, routines, and commitments, not because they are true, because they are necessary. The necessity is not metaphysical, it is existential. You must act as though you are someone, even if you know you are not. The acting is not fraudulent, it is survival. But now the acting is different. Before, you believed, or you half believed, or you did not think about it. Now you know. You are performing a self, and the knowledge changes the performance. It does not stop it. It makes it conscious. And consciousness, once introduced, cannot be removed. This is the danger. You can perform so consciously that the performance becomes parody. You watch yourself living, and the watching becomes contempt. You see through every gesture, every word, and every commitment, and the seeing through makes you incapable of commitment. You become a ghost, present but not participating, observing but not engaged. This is not freedom, this is paralysis. Or you can perform unconsciously, forcing yourself to forget what you know, choosing belief over clarity and safety over truth. You rejoin the structures religion, ideology, identity politics, nationalism, whatever offers a pre-packaged essence. You accept the script, you recite the lines. The relief is real. But the relief is purchased by betrayal. You know what you are doing. You are choosing the lie, and the choosing makes you complicit. Neither path is safe. The danger is structural. But there is a third possibility, and it is worse than both. You accept the abyss, not theoretically, actually. You live without the consolation of essence, without the fiction of continuity, and without the guarantee that any meaning you create will persist. You act anyway, not from hope, not from faith, from something more fundamental. The fact that you are here, and being here, means acting, and the acting creates consequences, whether you intend them or not. This is not heroism. This is the refusal of the escape routes. You do not pretend to know what you are. You do not claim to have found meaning. You do not believe in progress or purpose or the ultimate intelligibility of anything, but you continue. The continuation is not a choice in the sense of deciding between options. It is what remains when every justification has dissolved. And here is the danger. This state is indistinguishable from nihilism. From the outside, you look the same as someone who has given up, but from the inside, the difference is absolute. The nihilist believes nothing matters. You believe you cannot know if anything matters, but you act as though it might, because the alternative is to treat everything as equivalent, and equivalence is another form of knowledge you do not have. This is the razor's edge. You can fall into nihilism and not notice. You can slip into the performance of meaninglessness, the aesthetic of despair, and the comfort of believing you have seen through everything. And the comfort, once noticed, reveals that you have not gone far enough. True absence of essence offers no comfort at all. The question that remains is not what should I do, but what am I doing when I act without knowing what I am? You continue because the body continues. You eat because hunger does not care about metaphysics. You sleep because exhaustion is not a philosophical position. You speak because silence, maintained absolutely, is death. The continuation is biological, animal, and older than thought. But you are not only biology, you are also the watcher, and the watching makes the continuation strange. You eat, but you see yourself eating. You sleep, but you witness the surrender to sleep. You speak, but you hear the words as though someone else is saying them. The split does not close. Some traditions tried to close it through discipline, the monk rising at the same hour, performing the same rituals, speaking the same prayers, repeating until the repetition becomes you. The form shapes the person, but the form is chosen, and the choosing means you are not the form. You are the one who submits to it. The submission is voluntary. And voluntary submission is still the exercise of will, which means the will remains separate, watching the submission, capable at any moment of withdrawing. Other traditions tried to close it through ecstasy, the whirling dervish, the speaking in tongues, the orgiastic rite, the drug-induced vision, all attempts to bypass the watching by overwhelming it. And they work, temporarily. In the ecstasy, the split closes. You are not watching, you are absorbed, but the absorption does not last. You return. And the return is worse, because now you know what was lost, and you know it cannot be sustained. The gap is permanent. What you are left with is this: the necessity of acting without a foundation. You make commitments knowing they are not grounded in anything absolute. You love knowing the love will end. You create knowing the creation will be destroyed. You devote yourself to projects that will not outlast you, to people who will die, and to meanings that are contingent and revocable. This is not pessimism. Pessimism still wants the foundation. It mourns the absence. This is past mourning. This is the acceptance that a foundation was never possible, that the desire for it is the problem, and that the only authenticity available is the authenticity of living without it. But living is not easy. It is not noble. It does not redeem anything. You are still afraid. You still cling. You still betray yourself daily by pretending, even for a moment, that something is certain. The pretense is not eliminable. It is part of the structure. You cannot live without some fiction of continuity. But you know it is fiction, and the knowing does not release you from the necessity of living it. The terror is that this condition is not exceptional. It is not the result of modern alienation, or the death of God, or the fragmentation of culture. It is the human situation, revealed. It was always this. The structures myth, religion, tradition, philosophy were not solutions. They were management strategies. And the strategies have failed, or we have seen through them, which amounts to the same thing. What remains is the raw fact. You are here. You did not choose to be here. You will not be here forever. And nothing you do while you are here is guaranteed to mean anything beyond the moment you do it. And yet, you do it anyway. Not because it matters, not because it does not matter. Because the question of mattering has dissolved into the doing, and the doing is what you are, and stopping would require being something other than what you are, and you are not something other. This is not an answer. It is the disappearance of the question into the condition that generated it. The abyss is not beneath you. You are in it. You have always been in it. The ground you thought you stood on was the first fiction. The falling you fear is the only movement there has ever been. And still, incomprehensibly, you reach out. You make a mark. You speak a word. You touch another body, also falling, also groundless, also here. The reaching does not stop the falling. But it is what the falling does when it becomes conscious of itself. And that may be all there is.